Hello, my lovelies, and welcome back. Long time no see. The lovely Dan to my, I don't know, left, right, whatever it is. I'm bad at that. Dan and I are back for another episode of Epic Warriors of Middle Earth. And Dan, hello, first of all. Who's
Hey,
our topic? Who's our main guy today?
So today we will be talking about Gil-galad, the High King of the Noldor in the Second Age, High King of all the elves in Middle Earth.
Yes, and the last of them. We had a few predecessors, but he's actually the last one, and we're going to talk about that today. So, Dan, thanks for joining again. And I must say, I really enjoyed this series of Middle Earth warriors. And last time we had a baddie, we talked about Glaurung, and now we're talking obviously about quite the opposite. But also a great warrior. And yeah, Gil-galad, you said it. So Gil-galad plays a very important role in either, I mean, people who just saw the movies, he was even in the movies for a little bit in the prologue of Galadriel and Galadriel.
Really little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit. And I'm pretty sure, I think I said that to you, I'm pretty sure that he will play a role in the Amazon series, because I do think it's about the forging of the rings that will be the time around. And if you see, I mean, he was born, we just said it before we started the stream, he was born in the First Age, 450, I think, something like that, First Age, and he lived till, well, the end of the Second Age. So he was one of the longest, if not the longest, High King of the Noldor.
I think he would have been the longest, because the whole Second Age is like many times longer than the First Age, isn't it? So
yes, like 3,441. Yes,
exactly. Yeah.
That's weirdly.
That's a good memory.
No, obviously I have the notes, but this one I really do know, because it's an odd number that sticks in my head. Like, do you know this number? Like, when Rome appears and when the first Punion Wars are and stuff like that. You learn that, and somehow it sticks in your head. I don't know why. So yeah. Gil-galad, epic warrior and High King of the Noldor. And yeah, we said it. He ruled a very long time. Unfortunately, I mean, what do you feel? Do we know enough about him? Do you know enough about him? Can you ever know enough about Tolkien characters? Or for me, he's not super fleshed out. And
yeah, we know lots about his history, but not very much about his personality.
Yes.
I'd say.
Yeah.
So this is a character that's in appendices, in unfinished tales, in referenced in Lord of the Rings, obviously, and obviously in the Silmarillion. Towards the end of the Quenta Silmarillion, he's named a couple of times, but not a character we know a lot about him firsthand, because we get characters that we get secondhand accounts of him, but
exactly.
So yeah, it'd be really interesting to see how they portray him, I think, in the Amazon show, and I'm really looking forward to that, and I'm dying to know who they're going to cast for it, actually. Yeah. Because they have to get him right. They have to get him and Celebrimbor and Galadriel right, I think.
Yes.
Those are three key characters, other than Sauron as well.
Oh my God, yeah. Sauron is for me like the main, I mean, Galadriel, they're not getting Kate for that. At the beginning, I was like, she could still play her, it's not that. I was a bit sad when I heard they recast it. I mean, we don't know anything official. I don't think Amazon confirmed
this. It's not
actress.
like Kate Blanchett has aged badly, is it?
No, I want to be Kate when I'm old. Like, hello? Well, she's an elf, so she's not aging. Yeah. So yeah, like you said, it's I think they have a lot of freedom in portraying him, but how people like you and me see him, and we talk about that now because yes, Tolkien didn't flesh him out, but he told us a lot about his deeds, and obviously, it is pretty clear what his character must have been like, but it's also a bit boring, isn't it? Like, he's for me the archetype. Oh, sorry. I love to talk about Fëanor and how much I dislike him, but then in the end, it makes him interesting, right? And people like Meglin and Eol and all these elves of like the First Age, they are interesting people. And yes, Gil-galad, he was a good king. I assume he was a really good king. He was a good warrior.
He had a great reputation, for sure.
Yeah,
because his reputation lasts up until the War of the Ring, doesn't it? And
does, yes.
He's still held in high regard at that point.
Yes, by everyone, by humans and by elves, and probably by dwarves and all of the other races involved in that war, because he was one of the main guys responsible for Sauron's fall, and for the freedom of Middle Earth for a while. But yeah, so I mean, they have freedom in casting him. Don't make him too boring, please. And we don't know, I mean, we know.
Oh, they just need a handsome brunette man, tall, presumably, who's got a bit of presence about him, don't they?
Yeah, and with a good spear, and then with a good eglos,
Yes.
and then make it happen, Amazon. Yeah, no, I think he'll show up. Good. So we obviously know how he ended. I mean, that people who haven't read the books know he died with the others, with Elendil and with all the others on the battlefield in the War of the Last Alliance. But now we're going to talk about his life and his deeds and what he has achieved and where he came from, because yeah, well, there are two versions of him, kind of. Well, there are two versions of his parentage, and
there's more than two, actually.
There's more than two, yeah.
Yeah, we talked about this off camera, and that like there's two main ones, but there's more than that.
So often in Tolkien. Welcome to Tolkien.
So yeah, his mother had some questions to answer. No,
it was not about that, people.
No, it wasn't.
Not like that.
Yeah, as you said it, he was born in the First Age, about 450-ish, but we don't have an exact year. I don't think anyway. And very early on, actually, he was just in his first appearance, which isn't canonical. He was described as being a descendant of Fëanor, which we know is not true. At one point, he was considered a son of. No, thank God for him. Yeah, the most dysfunctional part of the family. At one point, considered a son of Finrod, which he kind of wavered in and out of that branch of the family. But Tolkien eventually decided that Finrod was childless. And there's a backstory there where Finrod had a woman who was still in Aman and didn't cross back over with him, and presumably was still waiting for him when he dies, which is sad and lovely at the same time, and good for him. But then in the published Silmarillion, and this is where we get to like the two main options, he was the son of Fingon.
Yes, exactly.
And Fingon kind of makes sense in many ways. But this
more sense.
Yeah, I mean it fits with what we've got, doesn't it? But the thing is, Christopher Tolkien went back into the notes and the letters and everything else, and decided that was an editorial mistake. And then his last word on it was that Tolkien's intention was to move him again to be the son of Orodreth, which is the nephew of Finrod.
Yes,
exactly. So a little bit complicated there, but he moves him around a few times, basically.
Yeah. So I think the main thing is he from the family of Fingolfin, the firstborn of the step brothers of Fëanor? So is he from Fingolfin's line, or is he from Finarfin's line? So these two could be the lines he's descending from. But in the end, he's a prince of the Noldor, and I think that is the most important one. And for me, the most important one is he's not related to Fëanor, because that wouldn't make any sense. Celebrimbor is the one who's related, and literally the last descendant of Fëanor, the last living descendant of Fëanor. And Gil-galad shouldn't be from that line, because otherwise stuff he did and wouldn't make sense, because he would be a cursed one and a doomed one, and his deeds were not, you know, they were selfless, and he was definitely not a Fëanorian descendant.
No, it doesn't fit with what we know about him, does it, at all?
Yeah, no.
So yeah, we can discount that one. But yeah, I mean, it's really not that important, except it's important because it informs you of who the character is a little bit. But it's not like that important to the story. Because what happens is, very early on, his father, whoever that may have been, gives him up for, well, adoption. Not really the right word, but he becomes the foster son of Círdan, basically.
Yes.
Is that your understanding?
Yeah. But then it were harsh times, you know, and I think that was the safe place to go for him, and I think that's why he went there. But yeah, it was the
year 455, so very young. He was sent to the havens of Falas, which is where Círdan was staying, and that's the year of the Dagor Bragolach.
Dagor Bragolach, yes, exactly.
Can't do that rolled R. So yeah, I mean, Christopher Tolkien, just to get back to the point about the editorial point, he says that it would have been better to leave this all obscure, as in, you know, we don't know, which might have been interesting as well, because you know, you look at these things and you think this is a historical text within its fictional frame, and maybe it's good that we don't know all the details sometimes, but.
Yeah, but and it's like in real history, you know, sometimes there are blank pages and blank spots, and you don't really know, and it's a guessing game, and that's very often in Tolkien, and I'm happy about that. I'm happy about not knowing where the Entwives are. I'm happy about not knowing who really is Tom Bombadil. I just think sometimes it's weird with the parentage stuff and the lineage, because that is obviously super important for Tolkien, because it tells you things and it foreshadows things because of all these dooms and prophecies going on. And that's, you know, it's not, so I think that one was important for him. And I think very often we have these problems with him going back and revising stuff and changing stuff, because obviously he wrote that text and many years ago, and then he had time to think about it. He went back to the Silmarillion, developed other stuff he wrote before. Then he actually changing stuff. He should have changed stuff in the Lord of the Rings, but that was already published, so he couldn't do it, you know. So I think this is why we have so many of these problems. And, you know, readers wrote him and said and pointed out obviously open endings and things they didn't understand, and then he went back, and that's just normal. But there's a big published book, and he couldn't take back stuff that was said there.
There must have been times where people like us would have written to him, and he would have thought to himself, maybe I should just write back, have you ever heard of the chicken or the egg? You know?
But he never did that. He always replied to all these letters I showed you. It's around the corner. I don't have it here now. But this book is that big, people. And it's like, there's so many letters, and I wish I would have lived in Christopher Tolkien's time, because I would be somebody that would have written that, man. Like I probably he would report me to the police as a stalker, but I would have written, and I have so many questions. Yeah, no.
Good. So yeah, I mean, it's an interesting point, but we'll move on. Because there's not an answer, and
no, he's from the line of the Prince of the Noldor. That is important, not related to Fëanor. I think this is our verdict on this one. And I think he followed Turgon, right? He followed after the fall of Gondolin. He followed Turgon. I think that is correct, and he was the 6th king.
Yes, yeah. That's
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know what year that is. I don't have that written down, but it's about 480, I think. Something like
yeah,
that.
it's pretty early on. He was a very
490.
young, yeah, he was a very young king. You know,
Yeah.
normally they were already like Turgon when he became king. I mean, he was born centuries ago, and he then became king. Obviously, he was very wise, and we know elves mature early on, right? But still, he was very young when he became king. Just like in the real world, you know, they're very often old mature people who go to the throne, and he was very like just a few years old, like I don't know, 60 or
We
something.
have a royal family here. They're not always mature, I have to say.
You know, we had many royal families, we just got rid of that. But yeah, no. So and I think what is also very important is he's one of the only high kings of the Noldor that wasn't born in Aman, that was born in Middle Earth. All the others were not born in Middle Earth. I think, yeah, no.
I think so,
no.
yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, so I think that sums up like the frame for Gil-galad.
Pretty much, yeah.
And he was never married.
No, not that we know of, no. We don't know of any romance in his life at all, do we? We don't not get that info
No,
in
he
any way.
apparently, this is why I say, you know,
The Bachelor.
boring, bit boring.
He was married to his spear.
Yeah. Yeah, okay. So no, but yeah, this is, I mean, they can obviously show, but I think it wouldn't go against canon because it's not mentioned. He was never married. I think that was never stated. But I think if he would have been, at least the name of the wife would have dropped somewhere in some appendices or wherever.
Yeah, but he didn't have children. We know that. So
no, he didn't. Yeah, same like Celebrimbor. You know, like all these ones. Basically, they all died out then, and that line also kind of died out. I mean,
there's an interesting bit about Celebrimbor, but we'll get to that actually.
No, say no. Now or not
okay.
now.
let's just fly off. So Celebrimbor, I was reading Unfinished Tales earlier, a little bit of the Galadriel and Celeborn chapter.
Yes. Yeah.
Not the whole thing because it's quite long, but sort of gloss through some bits that might be interesting. And in one of the versions of Galadriel's history, there's a bit in there about Celebrimbor possibly having like kind of a thing for Galadriel.
Oh yeah. Do
you remember this?
Yes. Yeah.
Which I think that might be an interesting plot device for them to use in the Amazon show.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
There are several different versions of Galadriel's history as well. So
exactly. And I mean, Fëanor had something. I don't know. Was it just about the hair? Was it about her? I think it was about her. I don't think it was just about the hair. And that with Fëanor, I mean, he was her uncle. And I always say that these very close relationships, you know, although maybe common in the Dark Ages, you know, it's weird for Tolkien and it never plays out.
And Westeros.
And yeah. Well, at least they were not brother and sister, but still he was the uncle. So, and even if Celebrimbor, well, they were not super close related because Celebrimbor was way down the line. He wasn't her cousin. He was like her cousin 4 times removed or something like that, which brings you to Arwen and Aragorn level. So I think that would be okay.
Maybe. I wouldn't like to speculate.
Well, we see it in the show.
Every Tolkien stream we get on this subject, don't we?
Yeah, but the thing is, even with Celebrimbor, there is the question of the parentage because there are also different versions. Who's the father? I feel like in an American talk show, who's the father?
Ricky Lake or something.
Yeah.
I thought that Celebrimbor was the son of Curufin. That was my
but there are also different versions. Who's the father? Yeah. Good.
So should we start with the Second Age?
Yes, because First Age, I mean.
Yeah, we've summed it up in the past. And Gil-galad doesn't have the biggest role in the ending of the story, does he? Really? He's there with Círdan, and he's there as the High King at the end, but he doesn't lead the host of the Valar that come and win the War of Wrath, do they? That's his.
No. He's not even mentioned there, I think.
No, I don't think he's mentioned in the bits with the Sons of Feanor and the Havens and all that stuff, isn't he? But he's not a big. It's not a big role. So at the start of the Second Age, after the destruction of Beleriand, he migrates with everybody else that stays to the Middle Earth that we all know and love from the Lord of the Rings in its earlier days, and he establishes the kingdom of Lindon. Which is kind of all that's left of Beleriand at this point as well, because it's if you look at the maps, they line up, and you can see where the Blue Mountains were in the eastern side of Beleriand. You can see them in the west in Eriador, which I think makes sense. And he establishes a kingdom there. But soon there's another sundering of the elves. So what happens is Celebrimbor, we mentioned him. He leads a contingent to Eregion, which we're getting into geography now. But that's the region that's between Rivendell and Khazad-dûm or Moria.
Yeah.
So he establishes a kingdom there early on in the Second Age.
Yeah.
So there's
and there are
two
lots of
big kingdoms of elves.
Smith and craftsmen, or the oh god, how's that one? Oh god, I forgot the name of the guild. They have Tolkien has a really cool name, like he always does for the guild of the smith.
No.
Yeah, it's a really cool name. I'll find out later.
Let me know, because that sounds interesting. What is this? Is this Celebrimbor's people? Is it?
Yes, Celebrimbor's people in a region. Yeah, the guild has the guild has a name.
Oh, I haven't heard this. Well, maybe I have and I've forgotten. But yeah, so it's the elves having this political fracturing again, where Celebrimbor, being the last of the House of Feanor, establishes his own kingdom and his own rule. Gil-galad is still considered the High King of the Elves by most everyone, but not everybody wants to directly be governed by him. And then we have the Sylvan Elves as well in Rhovanion, in Greenwood, which is later becomes Mirkwood, and Lothlorien as well is populated, but at this point Galadriel hasn't got there. I think that's about all of the elves.
Yeah, I know that. I googled because I don't remember, but it's super cool. It's the Gwaith y Myrdain. That's the name of the guild of the smith. That's
a wicked name. Can you send me that?
Yeah, it's really cool. So it's GWAI. Oh, sorry, it's very late. AITH, new word I, and then Myrdain. It's so cool. Like literally all of Tolkien's words. Sometimes I just read about Orome and all the Valar and all their other names, and I'm like, oh my god, this is literally, it's just, everything is so beautiful and it makes sense. Like when you hear he was a philologist, so he knows. But when you hear the words, even Celebrimbor, how cool is that name? I can't get enough of that. But you can, even if you don't know what Gwaith y Myrdain is, it makes sense that it's a Smith guild, isn't it? It sounds like Illuminati gone Middle Earth.
It sounds like more Finnish and Welsh to me, but
yeah, well, it's Sindarin, and I don't know if that it probably isn't Sindarin, because wouldn't make sense if he gives it a Sindarin name. So
yeah, well, I want to look that up now, so I will later.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, it's the guild's name.
But that sets us up for the Second Age. So what happens? The first time we kind of get Gil-galad in canon is when he meets Eldarion, right?
Eldarion, yes, one of my favorite characters. Yeah.
Brilliant character.
Yeah.
So
mariner.
He was one of the princes of Numenor, so he was a mortal man. One of the men of Numenor. One of the line of Elros. Yeah. He was at the time when he first reaches the shores of Middle Earth. He's not king. He's prince, and I don't think he's actually even heir at this point, because they have a custom in Numenor to name the heir to the throne later in life, don't they? And there's a whole ceremony.
Yes. Yeah.
But that was the year 727 when Aldarion makes his first trip to Mithlond, which is better known by the name Grey Havens.
Grey Havens, exactly. And I think it's important to say that the Numenorians, they got the island of Numenor pretty early on in the Second Age, and they went there and they stayed there for a really long time. They didn't marry back to Middle Earth. They stayed there, founded, great cities and their culture and whatnot. But Aldarion he was actually one of the first ones, being a prince as well, and having the power of bringing ships, and it's not just one small ship. I think he brought more people, and he
also established a guild, didn't he? Which was the Venturers Guild.
Yeah, exactly, which is super cool. Yeah, I just love Numenor. Seriously, I want to move to Numenor. So he was one of the first mariners, and marining becomes so important for Numenor, and this is where their power lay. They had the biggest and best armada. You see that in the end of the Second Age. Well, unfortunately, it didn't play out well, but I mean, they even defeated Sauron and whatnot. And he's a very important character, and it's important to know that what you said in the beginning, he was one of the first ones who came to Middle Earth, founded settlings there, but his intentions were good.
Very much so, I mean, we'll get to what happens, but I mean, he establishes an alliance with the elves, with Gil-galad.
Exactly.
So I mean, he's got the best intentions, and he's not the most well informed at that time, because he's rediscovering Middle Earth, having been part of a civilization that has been landlocked for 600 years, 700 years.
Yeah, exactly. They haven't been there. And they were excluded on their own island.
Bearing in mind the line of kings lives for 400 years. So, this is like 4 generations in at this point, or something, like 3 or 4. Yeah. But still.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He later became Tar-Meneldor, I think. He's Tar-Meneldor.
No, that's the father.
Oh, that's a father. Damn it. He's Tar-Aldarion. Okay, yeah. That's a father. They don't change. He doesn't change the name. Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Good. So in the year 882, Gil-galad sends a letter to the father via the son Aldarion, and it's basically an establishment of a relationship between the two powers. And it's the first time they've heard from mainland Middle Earth directly in correspondence, and it's a letter directly from Gil-galad to Tar-Meneldor.
And it's super interesting because it shows you, we say we don't know that much about Gil-galad, but we know about him being very foresighted and being very clever about the dealings of Middle Earth, what is going on. I think he had a pretty close eye on Sauron. He never trusted him. We'll talk about that later. He never trusted him. He knew something was brewing, and he didn't trust the peace that was happening at that time for a while. And he was so foresighted to forge an alliance with the Numenorians, who he knew, because we know elves were going and coming to Numenor, right? The Numenorians weren't going to Middle Earth, but elves were going and coming to the havens of Numenor. So they knew some things of what is happening in Numenor. And he was, I mean, there were not that, all the princes of the Noldor, they were gone, right? So they were not that many left to help and aid Gil-galad. There were not that many kingdoms left. And he knew the Sindar, like you said in the beginning, the Sindar wouldn't do what because he was not their king. They didn't accept, they had their own king. They had Thranduil's dad. They had Orofer was the king of the Sindar.
This is why they went east to establish a kingdom in Greenwood. Yeah,
exactly. And Gil-galad knew he couldn't just rely on the few elves and kingdoms that were left in Middle Earth fighting Sauron if something would happen. He knew he would need the aid of the Númenóreans, and that was very clever and foresighted of him to forge that alliance.
So we know quite a bit about Gil-galad the politician and Gil-galad the general as well. We just don't know about him the man.
Exactly. What was his favorite color? We don't know.
Probably green. Probably green or white, or grey, maybe.
Yeah. The starline was his favorite color.
Yeah. His name means the Star of Radiance, or
yes, exactly.
something like this. Star of Bright Light. Something like that, I think.
Yeah.
Do you want to
kind of how he ended, right? Because when you learn that he kind of died because of the heat, it's not like he got sorry, my microphone. It's not like he got a final stroke in his heart or whatever. He died of the heat of Sauron. And it's a bit like Fëanor, going up in flames.
Circumstances are different, but
I know. And Fëanor deserved that death. Sorry. Not sorry.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's more like, I'd say it's more like Fingolfin, if anything.
Yeah.
Dying in single combat with a Dark Lord.
Yes.
Do you want to read that letter, or should we gloss over that?
No, do it because
I've got a couple of quotes. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but
no, do the parts.
So Aldarion has given his father this letter from Gil-galad. Noldor, he's the king of Númenor. So it's addressed. It's not addressed. There's no address. Actually, no, it is. So it says, Ereinion Gil-galad, son of Fingon, it says. So it's Fingon in Unfinished Tales as well. To Tar Menelder of the line of Erendil, greeting. The Valar keep you, and may no shadow fall upon the Isle of Kings. Long I have owed you thanks, for you have so many times sent to me your son Anardil Aldarion, the greatest elf friend that is now among men, as I deem. So this is the son he's referring to, who's delivering the letter, who is the greatest elf friend. And then he gives us some news. He tells us basically what's going on in Middle Earth, and I'm going to gloss over all of that because it's long. But then he finishes.
He talks about a shadow in the east.
Yeah, I'm getting to that. So the penultimate paragraph says, "Behold, the darkness that is to come is filled with hatred for us, but it hates you no less. The great sea will not be too wide for its wings if it is suffered to come to full growth." So that's how he ends, pretty much. So it's not, he doesn't know that it's Sauron. The elves don't actually know who Sauron, they don't know that Sauron's even there. They know that there's evil afoot, but they don't know who or what, basically, is what this tells us.
It's and it's interesting, because again, he tells him, this is not just our dealing, this is not just our war. He hates you as well. He hates every free. This is what it says: is he hates every free human being in Middle Earth and also Númenor. And he'll come when he finished us, he'll probably come for you. That's basically the message. So you need to aid us, because it's not just about the elves. Because I do have the feeling very often that Morgoth's dealings were mainly with the elves, because Morgoth is Silmarillion, and that is mainly about the elves. Yes, that there were the three houses of the men, and men like Beren and Tuor and Turin, and that was super important.
But I think part of the point of Morgoth is that he underestimates men.
Exactly.
Would you say?
So second born, second in, very important, the second born. And he's not as fearful. But I think Sauron definitely has it for men as well, elves and men. and mainly men, especially in the Third Age, because there are not that many elves left, right?
Yeah, and what does Sauron do? He tries to drive a wedge between the two groups, doesn't he?
Exactly.
The two races, you know.
Yeah.
We won't cover that in depth because that's a different subject. But that's the other main thing that happens in the Second Age is that what Sauron does is he tries to drive a wedge there, and he succeeds to an extent.
Yes, and he you know, it's like he sets fire, a lot of fires, and then watches, you know, Numenor burn, because this is what he did. It's not like he didn't attack Numenor. He didn't bring the downfall of Numenor by attacking them. He's very clever about it, and he knew the weaknesses of men and people. Enjoy your wine, Dan.
I shall.
Yay. Yeah, exactly what you say. He tries to drive a wedge between these two factions, because they have not always been friends, you know, or allies even. Somewhere, like the people of Húrin and whatnot, they aided and
Eldarion, the elf friend.
Exactly. Exactly.
And Elendil, whose name pretty much literally means elf friend. Coincidence, I don't think.
Is anything a coincidence in Tolkien? I don't think so.
No, he doesn't believe in them.
No.
But let's move on, because we've gone for 35 minutes and we haven't even got to the Forging of the Rings yet.
What? Oh my God, that is the timekeeper here. Okay.
It says the time in a bright red box on the screen.
I know, but I mean, it's interesting what we talked about. So
it is actually. It's a wicked conversation. Like, honestly, I'm gonna enjoy watching this back because I'm learning a lot here.
Not by me, hopefully.
The Guild of Smiths. I've never heard of this, so I'm definitely looking that up tomorrow.
Yeah. Good.
But yeah, the around about the year 1000, Sauron approaches the elves of Lindon, Círdan and Gil-galad, and he approaches them in the guise of Anatar, the Lord of Gifts.
I wouldn't have said no to that guy coming with rings and whatnot. Like, hello.
Yep. Yeah, I just imagine him like bowling up with a jacket on, just like, do you want some rings?
Bling, bling. I have a red one. I have a green one. Yeah.
I got Rolexes. I got rings. I got rings.
Oh my God! I hope they don't do that in the series. No, they won't.
No,
he'll be epic.
He'll be amazing. He'll I mean, yeah, they've got to get the casting spot on, which I hope they will. It looks like it might be Joseph. What's his name?
Is it the guy who played in Game of Thrones?
Ned Stark's brother. Oh God, it's been a while. I can't remember his name. Benjen. Yeah, Benjen Stark. The guy that played him. It looks like it's going to be him. Potentially, maybe. We don't know. But
I don't want to be mean, and I mean everybody has their own taste, but I don't.
He's not who I pictured.
No, and he's not attractive. So isn't Anatar like the hottest shit ever?
It's supposed to be, yeah. I don't. I mean, not my type either, but you know, different teams.
You're more like, hey, Galadriel, what's going on? You have very nice hair. Can I have a strand of your hair?
Can I have 3?
Can I have 3?
Yes, Dan, you can have 30.
Good. Okay, moving on, people. Back to
Anatar. He approaches the elves, and he basically says, I've got this new thing, rings, magic rings, and he's like, rings. They're awesome. They'll give you powers and help you preserve your kingdoms. And I don't know what his sales pitch is, but probably not that. Círdan and Gil-galad don't trust him. They're having none of it. They basically turn him away.
Also, Galadriel doesn't.
And Galadriel, because she's there at the time as well. Still, isn't she? Yeah. One thing we haven't covered actually as well, which we've talked about before, but is the Malon trees.
Oh yeah, it's
Which
so
Aldarion as well, because this was around this time as well, wasn't it?
exactly when he became king, I think, because it was one of the gifts. I think, like, everybody gratulates you when you become king, and one of the gifts from Aldarion to Gil-galad was a sapling of the Malon tree that only grew in Aman and in Numenor.
Yeah, because the elves originally took the seeds of the Malon trees from Aman, potentially I think from Tol Eressëa, which is the island off the coast of Aman.
Yeah, exactly.
To Numenor.
Yeah.
And then from Numenor, Aldarion the Mariner, who we mentioned earlier, took them to Gil-galad. And Gil-galad couldn't get them to take root where he lived in the mountains. So he gave them to Galadriel, who later planted them in Lothlorien. And that's why you have giant magical trees in Lothlorien.
Exactly. And but it is said, and that is super cool, that they didn't grow as tall as they grew in Numenor. And I think that's important because obviously I think Numenor is closer because it's so far west. It's the furthest west you can go before reaching Aman, where elves and humans are allowed to live, and they didn't grow as big as in Numenor. So how big were these trees in Numenor? I asked myself, because they were big in Lothlorien, right? And if you hear somebody like Sam,
it's implied in the Aldarion and Erendis story that he chopped some of them down. It doesn't actually say that they're Malon trees, but he did a lot of forestry.
Yeah, for the ships,
both in Numenor and in Middle Earth.
Yeah, for the ships. Yes,
for the ships, for the navy. So there was that huge navy
which
that we mentioned came at a cost.
Yeah, exactly. Which shows you, because we know Tolkien loved trees, and this again symbolizes, the industrialization for ships, for forging wars, because not all these ships were ships, to trade. They were warships as well, right? So cutting down trees to create warships. Ooh.
Well, they were both, and Aldarion was motivated by exploration as well as.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, he wasn't really a warlike king, was he? It was
no. But later on, what they did and cut out, because it said they kind of really destroyed forests in Middle Earth to have enough wood for the Armada, because nothing was left in Numenor.
Yeah. The more we talk about this, the more I want to see Aldarion in the show as well, which I don't think we will. But
nah, it's too early on. Aldarion is maybe a flashback. They can work with many flashbacks, as well as this series will have lots of lots of first of all episodes, and then lots of what's it called? Like, it will run over many years, so there might be flashbacks and people being talked about, and deeds and stuff. No, I think maybe the story of Erendis and Aldarion and his wife is very important for the downfall of Numenor, and what happened, and the line of them, their descendants. So maybe it would be cool, but
it would make a good spin-off miniseries, maybe.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yes, everything would make that. Please, more Silmarillion stuff.
If they can ever start filming again.
Yeah, it will happen. It will happen. Yeah. So, and then, the end of that story, what you started, is so beautiful, because who gets from Galadriel then another sapling of the seeds for the melon trees?
Well, we'll give you a clue. He's about 3.5 feet tall. Samwise Gamgee, the gardener.
And he's the best character. Yeah, and he gets that, and he plants it in the Shire, and it's like the center then of. Yeah.
He plants it where the party tree was from Bilbo's party.
Yes.
Because that's been torn up by Sauron.
And the scouring of the
Shire. Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. And so, it's a symbol of hope, actually, for me, these trees, and the story, how they tell it. It came from Aman, then went to Numenor, then went back to Middle Earth, didn't grow there, couldn't, the roots couldn't no roots there, and then Galadriel took it, did something good with it, created a beautiful space, then she gave it to Sam, who then the tradition keeps on going, and it's beautiful.
Yeah, And it's amazing that we've got another story about a lineage of trees that went across the oceans from one region and island to
not just Nimloth, the white tree of Gondor.
We've got two stories that are similar there. Really, I've never really. I have thought about that before, but
he loves trees. Yeah.
Good. But we should move on because I mean that's interesting, and I really hope we get Malorn trees in the show because they need to be in Numenor. We need to have Malorn trees and Mithril in Numenor.
Yeah. Oh my god, yes.
Because Mithril I think could be really interesting because it could be interesting for the plot as well.
It's also in Numenor. It's found in Numenor as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because Numenor was at the start of the Second Age was raised out of the sea.
Yeah.
So presumably this Mithril was always there, and when it was raised, the Mithril was raised with it, and that's why it's available there. And obviously the other place we hear Mithril is Moria, which we've just said Celebrimbor has a kingdom next door. Also not a coincidence because he's a smith and a tinkerer.
He created the beautiful door we know from the movies.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, the glow in the dark door.
Yeah, and his
speak friend and enter door.
Exactly. So he created that, and actually his house sigils is on the door as well, which is super cool. The stars.
Yeah, so hopefully we'll get a bit of politics between the dwarves and the Númenóreans and the elves of Celebrimbor, which should be interesting. The Mithril trade. So then,
if you talk about the forging of the rings, obviously the dwarves will play a role because they got the rings.
Yeah, they had 7 of them, didn't they? So I think it's during the 4th is given one of them. Might have that wrong.
I don't. I know nothing about dwarves.
It's one of the Durins who are all got the same name. But yeah, so the year 1000, Anatar approaches the elves, and Gil-galad's not interested. So he goes to Celebrimbor in Eregion, and then Celebrimbor is all about the bling. He's a son of or a grandson of Feanor, and he's got delusions of Feanorian proportions. So he wants that power, and he wants that. And he's the greatest. He's said to be the greatest smith since Feanor. And he forges in secret. He forges the 3 elven rings, and with the help of Anatar, who is secretly Sauron, he forges the 7 dwarven rings and the 9 rings of men.
Exactly. So that was before, and then he saw through him, and Sauron was not there at that time, and then he forged the 3 rings for the elves, and because Sauron never touched them, this is why.
Yeah, the elven rings weren't made by Sauron. He had no part in that.
Exactly. Yeah. But it's very, it's very similar. Like again, it's it mirrors what Morgoth did in Aman with the Noldor, because he also taught them how to forge weapons, for example. He taught them a lot, I mean, you can say what you want about Fëanor, but he took in what Morgoth, because Morgoth was a very good smith. Obviously, he was not Aule, right? But he had many qualities, and he taught the Noldor, obviously not always thinking about, why do I want them to wear weapons? Yeah, so they can attack and kill each other, not me. And which he then did. Fëanor attacked his brother in full armor at a party. Like, okay. So it's mirroring what Sauron does with the elves, what Morgoth did with the Noldor.
Yeah, he took his cues from his old boss.
Yeah.
And then in the year 1600 of the Second Age, Sauron secretly forges the One Ring. And I think most people probably roughly know this part, but maybe not the details. So Celebrimbor overhears him, doesn't he? He overhears the invocation of the One Ring to rule them all, One Ring to find them. I think, or does he? I don't remember now.
I think so.
Pick up here. Yeah, he overhears him, and that's why there's that inscription on the ring, I think, as far as I remember. And I love that part of the ring poem because it's in a different meter to the rest of the poem, which is how you know that that's a different thing, because the whole poem is a lore poem that the elves have, but that part is a quote from Sauron.
Yeah, exactly. It's also in black speech, actually. Like
yes,
the
that's
inscription is in black speech, so it takes you out of the normal poem, and this is what he always does with the rhymes, right? You know automatically from the rhythm, oh, something is off now.
But viewers, if you remember your English lessons, poetry, poetic meter, the ring poem, most of it is truncaic, so it's I don't remember, it's stressed, unstressed, or unstressed, stressed. I don't know. I'm not a poetry guy particularly, but the point is those two lines are in a different meter, which is cool. Anyway, getting off topic a little bit, but we're on Celebrimbor, so he senses that Sauron's intent, and the elves take off the rings. So basically what happens is they realize that the One Ring, they realize Sauron's plan, and they sense it, and they take off their rings, because the elven rings aren't made by Sauron. They're not evil, but they are still under the dominion of the One Ring.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
And I do think, I always asked myself, why is that and how is that? And I think we can really, if we talk, I mean, Celebrimbor is not a warrior. I don't know if he would fit in our warrior topic here, but one day we will talk about him and the forging of the rings, because it's so interesting. And I never knew
I don't think you can tell Gil-galad's story without explaining this part, though.
No,
can you?
No. And they are, but it's completely interwoven, and the whole cutting off the ring from Sauron's finger in the end and all that, he was involved in all that. So it's important to tell the story and to know what was he up to during that time. But I never got the part that why are the 3 elven rings connected to the One Ring? Because Sauron didn't touch it, Sauron didn't forge it, so it must be Fëanor, because Fëanor Celebrimbor, because he created them. Why else? Because if Galadriel wears it, she's not touched by Sauron. She's not influenced by Sauron. If Elrond, if Círdan, all of them, what is the reason it's influenced? Just because it was forged during the same time? No. And the One Ring was forged at another place as well, because Eregion is not Mount Doom. That's very far away. So I never got that. Why are they connected? It must be Celebrimbor.
Yeah, potentially. But he's not involved in the forging of the One Ring, though. So...
I know, but he was under Sauron's influence.
Maybe that's the point. Maybe it's the influence. Maybe it's the Elven Rings were inspired by Sauron in a looser sense, and that's why they're not corrupted wholly, but that's why they're the same technology, and there's the same common denominator of the Dark Lord.
Exactly. And the thought is the same, because the rings have power, right? They are rings of power. Sauron's ring, bigger power, more power, different power, but those rings have power. Like they open, you can see in the hearts of the others, you can influence, whatever these rings can do. But they have power. They are rings of power. And I do think that's the point, because Sauron taught Celebrimbor this forging technique of putting energy and whatnot into these rings and making them powerful. And I think that concept must, and him doing it, him being influenced by him, that concept and what he did must have been the dominion over the other rings. This is the only logic explanation I have for that.
Yeah, it's kind of a loose concept in a way, but it works as far as it needs to. But it'd be interesting to see how that plays out in the Amazon show yet again.
Yeah, and I
coming
hope
to your small screen soon.
Yeah, and soon-ish. And I hope they they do justice by that, and they just don't say, oh yeah, Sauron was around at that time and this is why the rings, you know. I want an explanation for something like that. It doesn't have to, you know, I mean, they will create their own canon partly, and maybe we don't like it, but still I want a deeper thought on that at least, and not just, yeah, they were rings of power, that was it, and they were influenced and overshadowed by the One Ring, so this is why they had to take them off. And yeah, I want to know why.
So the next major event on our timeline is the start of the War of Elves and Sauron, which was in the year 1693. 93 years after the forging of the One Ring.
Yeah.
Which I sort of glossed over the timeline and wrote all the dates down earlier, but I don't remember. Does much happen in the meantime? Because the 93 years is quite a long time in a way. But
no, I think like in the Silmarillion and appendices, we learn more about Numenor at that time. What happened in Numenor about that time? We don't learn a lot what happened in Middle Earth. Nothing I know of.
But war breaks out in Middle Earth, and in particular in Eriador, because Sauron invades Eriador, which is, you know, where the elves are. And Celebrimbor at this point, and this is interesting. Researching this, Celebrimbor at this point, he's realized his mistake, I guess, trusting Anatar. And he sends the rings away. He sends Vilya and Narya to Gil-galad, and he sends Nenya to Galadriel, who keeps Galadriel keeps Nenya up until the end of the Third Age. But he sends Vilya and Narya to Gil-galad,
which shows you how much.
And Círdan, because Círdan pretty much lives next door.
Yeah.
But Celebrimbor doesn't.
Basically, his stepfather. No, he's his father, kind of father figure.
Sort of. Yeah. He's everybody's father figure.
Yeah, because he's old as F.
Yeah. And then, so Gil-galad has got 2 rings at this point, basically. But there's 2 different versions. So there's in the Lord of the Rings, Círdan has Narya right from the beginning, I guess from this point on. But this event is not like clearly stated in the Lord of the Rings. But I think from this point on, Círdan has Narya, which eventually gets given to Gandalf. Which is in Unfinished Tales, as far as I recall. So Gil-galad has only got Vilya.
Yeah.
Which pretty soon ends up getting given to Elrond. So Gil-galad actually doesn't keep the rings for long at all. He doesn't have a ring after that point. So that's kind of weird.
It is, but then
So they're keeping them secret. They're the keepers of the rings, and from this point on, they keep them secret because they don't want Sauron to find them.
Exactly, and I think it would be easier and logical if the High King of the Noldor or the High King of the Elves, or whatever you want to say, has the ring. It's like the same thing. Like, why don't they send epic warriors like Glorfindel to destroy the ring? Because with Sauron, you have to be like 3 steps ahead, you know, and keep it secret. And I think this is the reason. And they wanted to spread the rings, you know. Galadriel was in Lothlorien at that time, founded the kingdom there. Círdan was at the Havens. Gandalf wasn't even there in Middle Earth at that point, I think. Yeah. So he wanted to spread it, and because he didn't want all the 3 rings or 2 rings being with the High King, that's literally too obvious and too easy. Yeah,
but by the end of the Third Age, it is obvious and easy, though, isn't it? Because you know, the powerful elves that are left at that point.
Yeah.
Who would you pick to hide the rings with? I'd pick Elrond and Galadriel, who've got 2 of them at the end of the third. You know, it's kind of the worst kept secret at that point, isn't it? But you know, we're not here to criticize. We're just here to
analyze.
But yeah, this is the War of Elves and Sauron, the Elves and Sauron. So what happens is basically Sauron invades Eriador and he captures Celebrimbor after he sends the rings off, and he tortures him for like a few years, I think.
Yeah, it's literally it's really horrible. Yeah.
So he tortures him to find the location of the rings where they were sent off to, the Elven rings. This is, but Celebrimbor won't give up the locations, and I think he dies in captivity, doesn't he?
Yes. And then I think, didn't they put his head on a spit, like something? They do something to him, and yeah, it's not nice.
Something awful, yeah. So yeah, that's I mean, that's what happens, and then basically the letter that we mentioned earlier to the Númenóreans, that comes back around because Gil-galad, he sends Elrond to Eregion to fight. He sends him with an army to fight the forces of Sauron, and then he sends for aid from the Númenóreans, and then the Númenóreans turn up with their fleet and save the day. And that was Tar Minister was the king at the time in Númenor, and I think he sends his son. Does he? You've probably got this fresh from your Witch King video, or maybe not. It was a while ago now. But,
yeah, who might not be the Witch King.
Yeah. Was it Minister or Kiriatan? You said was the Witch King. I don't remember which one it was. Kiriatan, yeah. So is that the son of Minister? Because I forget. These Númenóreans, like, they're almost as bad as the Feanorians.
Yes, it's really bad.
I forget the names, is what I'm saying. But
he was the nephew of the queen.
Okay. I'll take your word for that. I don't know the line of Elros.
I think during that time it was the ruling queen, and he was the nephew because she didn't have descendants.
Right. This is after they changed the rule of succession.
Yeah, he's the son of the queen's brother.
Okay. So yeah, that's the War of Elves and Sauron. I think we've pretty much covered it.
Yeah.
So it's a big event in the Second Age, and probably be season 2 or 3 of the show.
Maybe. Yeah, and you can see, he's like a 3D army chess player. He's very clever because he forged alliances, like all the European rulers did at that. Sorry, my cat is doing weird things. She's climbing into whatever, into the wardrobe.
She made a bloody sacrifice just before we went on air, didn't she?
That was the other one. Yeah.
That was a different one.
Yeah, I had 3. So one killed a mouse, and I just had like the blood on my carpet. Looks like a crime scene here. Yeah. So what were we talking about? He's very, foresighted and very clever, telling Elrond to come here, telling the Númenóreans help us. If he wouldn't have done that, Sauron would have overrun everything, and he would have won. I still think, and this is my theory, and it might not. Kiki,
I heard that.
9. Yeah, she's in. Why? These cats are insane. Sorry.
Kiki, 9.
Yeah. 9. Right, they only understand German, although she's Greek. Kuta from Athens.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
Yeah. Oh well. Yeah. So I think. What was I saying? Yeah. Oh, my theory on that defeat of the Númenóreans. I'm not sure if Sauron really was defeated, because obviously he wanted to be captured, because what happened then? He was captured by the Númenóreans and went with them as a prisoner. Sauron is not a prisoner, people. To Númenor, to then bring on the downfall of Númenor from the inside. So I mean, yes, it was super clever of Gil-galad to do all that, and they would have lost otherwise. But I'm not sure if the Númenóreans defeated Sauron that easy like they did. But that's my theory. The book doesn't say he faked it or anything. They say, and we know he fed them. We know that, but fear doesn't mean Sauron couldn't still win, right? He feared them because they were warriors and had.
If you want to defeat somebody that you fear, you do something sneaky like that, don't you?
Exactly.
Maybe.
Yeah.
So yeah,
and
maybe.
not attack an open field, you know. Yeah, good.
So then we pretty much skip a big amount of time in order to get to the next Gil-galad part. So just to kind of summarize, in the meantime, the downfall of Numenor happens.
Boom.
Basically.
End of the Second Age.
Yeah, we don't need to go into that because that's a whole big topic that we can do. We can talk hours about that. So
oh my God,
let's not. So yeah, the next big thing is the forging of the last alliance of elves and men, which I think most people will probably be familiar with that term, which is in the year 3430 of the Second Age, which is 1,737 years after the War of the Elves and Sauron. I worked that out earlier.
So like they literally skipped 2,000 years. What happened? Who knows?
Well, we know. I mean, because we know the downfall of Numenor happens. So Sauron's attention at this time is on men. And I think actually we are told in Unfinished Tales that Gil-galad himself, he, getting back to him again, he expands his land at this time. So he expands his reach and his influence across Middle Earth because Eriador is free again. I don't know, exactly how that works, but yeah, there's a bit in Unfinished Tales about this somewhere or other. So yeah, the year 3430, Isildur, who we should all know who that is the son of Elendil and
made it out of Numenor.
Sorry, I didn't catch that. You broke up.
It's one of the few of the families that made it out of Numenor.
Yes, yeah. So he's one of the faithful. Elendil is his father, and at this point he's the ruler of Gondor, essentially, alongside his brother. His father rules Arnor in the north, and he jointly rules Gondor with his brother Anarion. But Sauron attacks again. So Sauron's back in Mordor at this point, and he attacks, and Isildur is forced to flee by ship. So he sails north to meet his father in the north, in Arnor. And then together, the two of them, they meet with Gil-galad, and presumably Círdan is there and some of the other elves. And they have a council, I'd imagine. We don't have this scene in, descriptive detail, but they have a meeting and they forge the last alliance.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the following year...
Cool, and I do think that's also under the lead of Gil-galad, partly.
Yeah, the Gil-galad was in charge of all of the elves still at this point. I mean, you can speculate on the chain of command, I suppose. But there were lots of people in the last alliance. It wasn't just them. We've also got Orather, who was Thranduil's father. So Legolas's grandfather, who was king of Greenwood the Great at that time, which was later Mirkwood, as we said before. Gil-galad, who was king of the elves. Elrond, who was Gil-galad's herald. Círdan was there too, and Amdir, who was king of Lothlorien at that time.
Yes.
And also, we're told in Unfinished Tales that Thranduil was there too.
With his father,
yeah. I mean, he wasn't in charge of anything because his father was still alive. But yeah.
Well, it could have.
And they assemble their army at Rivendell all together.
Yeah.
Sorry, what were you going to say?
No, it could have been another outcome if maybe Thranduil would have led the armies, because Orather clearly, I mean, he probably also hated the not hated, but didn't want to, play under the rule of or act under the rule of a Noldorian prince, because that was a problem. They didn't want to be commanded by an Noldor elf because they didn't like them, because they thought they are responsible for the downfall of Beleriand. and King Thingol.
They weren't wrong, really, were they? Yeah. Should we talk about where Oropher and Thranduil came from? So they were originally Sindar from Doriath, who, if you've seen our previous episodes, you'll know about Doriath. This is the kingdom of Thingol and Milian the Maya.
Yeah.
And
Luthien, blah blah.
Yeah. It's mother and father of Luthien. So we don't need to go into all that, or we'll get way off topic. But yeah, they were Sindar from Beleriand, so they had a grudge basically, which goes way back, and but they were part of the last alliance, so they were on the same side at this time.
But this is like. Yeah, but this is like you said before, you know, like the letter said, he's all our enemy. And this is what this is probably Gil-galad wrote the same letter to Oropher, right? And Thranduil and Amdir and all the others.
Yes, you can picture that, can't you? Definitely.
Yeah, because he said, I know you don't like me. I know you don't accept me as your king, but please aid us, because we are all his, you know, we are all in this together. He's our enemy, our common enemy. He'll come for all of us, and I think this is why they came, right? And but it's very important to know that they did not accept Gil-galad, and this brought down, I mean, you know, the disaster of the Gladden Fields and or the Dead Marshes. This is literally all of Orofer's people, Thranduil's people, a third of the people, or 2/3. I think he just went back to 1/3. So 2/3 of the people died in that battlefield, just because they didn't accept Gil-galad. Well, not just, but they didn't accept Gil-galad. They didn't listen to his command, and they attacked early.
Yeah, this is the Battle of Daggerlad, which was the battle plain in front of the Black Gate. So this is 4 years after the last alliance was forged. They march on Mordor. They all join together, and they march. And yeah, as you said, Oropher dies in this battle, and it's quite sad what happens, because he gets driven off, I think. And he gets lost in the marshes, and he gets surrounded, and that's why we have the Dead Marshes in the Lord of the Rings, because it was a slaughter, and that's why it's haunted, and why there's, you know, dead people looking out at you from the puddles.
Yeah, but how Tolkien,
however Gollum puts it.
I know. Ugh. I'm still afraid when I see that scene, by the way. But yeah, but how Tolkien explained it is that they attacked early. And they didn't listen to what the original plan was, or they didn't want to wait for Gil-galad to tell them what to do, and so they attacked on their own. And I'm not a battle expert or an army person, but that's obviously, you know, they didn't have the backup. They couldn't crush him from more sides. This is how I understood it. And obviously the Sindar elves, they were not as weaponized, and as they didn't have heavy armor and stuff like that, like the Númenóreans and like the Noldor had. They had light armor. They were woodland people. I mean, that should tell you everything.
Yeah, they were less technologically sophisticated, weren't they? The Sylvans. So they didn't, as you say, they didn't have the armor and armaments that the other elves did, or that the Númenóreans did. I mean, you don't know whether they were actually really a warlike people. I mean, because all we have to go on is what we see later on, which you know, we see their descendants fight a little bit.
But they had to fight in Mirkwood, because it became Mirkwood, because, you know, all of Ungoliant's brood was there, and and Dol Guldur,
the necromancer, and
Guldur was rising again. I think they were good fighters. They were just obviously the Noldor were highly. I mean, they started equipping themselves back in Aman like thousands of years ago. They knew how to forge weapons.
As you said before, Melkor taught them, or Morgoth as he was, taught them how to build weapons in the first place. He invented weapons, and that's where they got warfare from, and that's why they were so far ahead of everyone else.
And they were close to the dwarves, right? All of them, the Noldor were very close to the dwarves, and we know the dwarves had wicked armor. They could withstand dragon fire in their helmet. So the Noldor were close to them. So obviously the equipment of the Noldor was way better than Woodland.
You mentioned the dwarves. This takes us back to Celebrimbor again as well, because his kingdom of Eregion was right next to Moria. As we said before, he built the doors of Moria, or the eastern door, the western door, sorry. And obviously there was a reason why he set up there, and I think the reason was Mithril. That's my theory.
Yeah.
It makes sense, doesn't it?
It does.
But yeah. So, I mean, you really get a sense of, like, when you actually go through the histories like this, you get a sense of there being different offshoots of the elves and different subcultures there, which is really interesting.
And it's just like, you know, it is like in our history, they were the Romans, you know, they run empires, but still, you know, people like the Huns who literally had horses and I don't know what kind of weapons, but it was different. Or the, you know, the Germans then coming in, the Germanic tribes, literally standing in front of Rome with, I don't know, battle axes. It was very different from high advanced Romans in their perfect golden shiny armor. You know, it was the same in our time. There were different kind of standards for armies and all that.
So then they win the battle in the end of the Battle of Dagolad. The allies, I'm going to say, the Free Peoples.
Free People of Middle Earth.
They win the battle and they win entrance to Mordor and they march on Barad-dûr and they lay it under siege. And then the siege of Barad-dûr lasts for 7 years, which is you know, if you've only seen the movies and you've made it this far through this podcast, that might surprise you because that scene in the movie was like 30 to 45 seconds, but 7 years worth of Middle Earth history there.
But then, you know, Tolkien often exaggerates a bit on that because he says in the First Age one of the siege of Medros, and or was it even Fëanor? I don't know, of Melkor's fortress of Angband, siege of Angband, that lasted for like hundreds of years. And I think sometimes, and then battles take on one night, like the fall of Gondolin is literally one night. So
it's not terribly realistic, I suppose, if you look at it like that. I mean, I think you can speculate on how he kept the orcs alive. Maybe he sort of, because usually in siege warfare in medieval history, you have this idea of supply lines, and you have to keep if you're the army that is besieging a fortress, you have to keep your supply lines short enough that you can feed your troops and starve out the enemy. Or you can break through the walls, or you can, you know, climb the walls, or you can find a hidden way in, or whatever. But and that's what happened with Gondolin, because, you know, it was a surprise attack in that sense, and that was your Trojan horse theory, wasn't it, when we talked about that? But you know, the siege of Barad-dûr lasting 7 years, like, it doesn't terribly make sense, but it also kind of does in context, because it's not supposed to be realistic. It's also, you know, Sauron's forces, they're orcs and they're monsters and whatever else, and who knows what they eat, you know. And Barad-dûr is the greatest fortress, you know, that's existed since Angband, so since Thangorodrim. So it's, you know, you've got this army but they can't get in, and you've got an army defending and they can't get out, but maybe they don't need to. So maybe it had
supplies from the east, you know, the Easterlings and whatnot. You know, I don't think they came from the east. Potentially. I think they came from the west. So maybe he had supply lines running back to Mordor, you know, like back to the east, or to Rhûn in the south. I don't think they came from Rhûn, so maybe in the south.
Do you know, I'm going to speculate on the Amazon show again here. Do you remember the maps that they released one by one? The Twitter maps. They released them on Twitter. One by one, and they had those regions on there, didn't they? They had Cand and Rune, I think, and they had some of those regions. Do you think we maybe see some of those?
Yes, because I think they casted people of color. They casted a lot of various races, and I do think that will be covered. Yeah, and I think it's cool to explore.
That'd be really cool, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Yes, it's cool because if you know the history of Gondor, you know, I love the history of Gondor and all the Gondorian kings, and that's really, really interesting. It's cool how, you know, because the Black Numenorians came from there as well, and it's cool. So I want to see that. I don't want just to see elves and Numenorians. That's boring. No, I want to explore Middle Earth.
Yeah. There's another region on the maps that they had. I mean, we shouldn't talk about this for too long, but there was another region in the far east, which was a mountain range, which I've only ever seen in the Karen Fonstad Atlas. Which I can't even remember the name of it, but it's like, I think it's like all the mountain ranges have got a color, so it's named after a color. It might be it's not the Blue Mountains because those are the ones in Beleriand, but it's not there's the Iron Mountains and there's the Misty Mountain. No, I don't remember. They've got a name, but they were on there too, and that's cool. Just as
maybe some dwarves out there, like the stiff-beards. We hear nothing about them. Maybe it's them, the broadbeard. You know, maybe it's dwarves.
Those maps are really cool though, because I mean, they showed you Numenor like in perspective of where it actually was, which is actually far to the south of everything else we know. So I'm gesturing with my arms here, and you can't really tell, but check that out on Lord of the Rings on Prime on Twitter.
Yes, and it's super cool because it tells you what time approximately is about, because they named like Rohan was named Calenadon at that time, and so you know, okay, it must have been before it happened. You know, there was a first king in Rohan and all that, so you can like at least 100 years, or a few hundred years, you know what time it will play in, which is cool.
Yeah, some of the maps are from different time periods as well, because I think there's Khazad-dûm and Moria are both on two different maps. They've given both names, which is...
The thing is, maybe they made a mistake. I'm not super sure. Did Tom Shippey or some map person overlook it before they posted it? You know,
I don't think Shippey wouldn't have got that wrong.
Exactly. So were they involved in... because they posted that like what, a year ago now? I think it's literally a year ago. It was in May something like a year ago. So let's see.
Yeah, we'll see. But yeah, so what happens next? We're up to the siege of Barad-dûr. So as you said right at the beginning of this, the Second Age ends in the year 3441.
Exactly.
And you said that without needing a notebook, so well done you.
That's just the 1 year I know. I don't know any more years.
And this is the death of Gil-galad and Elendil. So what happens is 7 years of siege. Sauron has had enough, and he breaks through the doors of Barad-dûr, and he almost single-handedly breaks the siege, basically. So he drives the forces of the Free Peoples back, and his army streams out behind him. And this is a desperate move from him, really, because he doesn't usually do this kind of thing. But he drives them all the way back to the slopes of Mount Doom, and there he's engaged in let's call it single combat, but he is engaged in single combat by Gil-galad, our hero, and Elendil.
And Gil-galad has a super cool weapon, and it's not a sword, people, because you know I love the weapons of Middle Earth, and it's a spear, and the name is Eglos, which means spear of ice, and you know the baddie, fire, and then spear of ice, song of ice and fire. Just saying.
Yeah. And Elendil's got Narsil, which is their sword. We know swords.
Yeah. Broken sword of the king.
Yeah, there's two great weapons of the great leaders of the Free Peoples.
Yeah. We don't know, although, of the spear. We don't know what happened to the spear. I don't.
No, I was thinking this. I was about to say this. We don't know what happened to it, do we?
It should be cool, you know, like if they took a broken sword. Well, I mean, that cut off the finger, but still took the broken sword. Somebody should still have. Maybe Elrond, because he was so close to him. He was also kind of fostered by Gil-galad, and so maybe he still has the spear, which would also be cool.
Yeah,
because Elrond have a hole with lots of weapons.
Yeah, I mean, you'd think that they would keep that in reverence, and that they would keep that as an heirloom or as an artifact of history, or they wouldn't chuck that away, would they? Yeah, I've never really thought about that before, but I mean, there's no reason to reforge it, is there? I suppose, because it's not. There's no like line of Noldor to you know, symbolically reforge the line like they do with Anduril with Aragorn's sword. I mean, so there's no reason to reforge it. So I guess they probably just locked it away somewhere. But
yeah, because it's a symbol of the last king. That was the weapon of the last king of the last High King. Because Elrond didn't. I mean, technically, Elrond could have taken on because they were related, right?
Maybe they buried it with him. Because I think after the battle they bury him in a mound somewhere or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But that's not what elves did. That's not what happened, because you know the sword. Because all the swords of the, well, I mean, they didn't have time to bury anyone in Gondolin, but you know Gandalf has Glamring, right? And that was the sword of Turgon, of the king of Gondolin. And then later Gandalf finds, because you know they find the swords with the Goblin King, blah blah, and he has.
They find it in the troll's house,
in the troll's cave, exactly, and he kills the Goblin King and what? Yeah, exactly. So he has a sword, and I don't think they bury the. I think that's what men maybe do. I don't think that would elf. I think they pass the heirlooms, but then, as you said, Gil-galad didn't have any straight descendants. So although Elrond was related to him, again, they were related.
Elrond's related to everybody, though.
He is. He literally is. I know.
No, he is. Yeah. I have a theory about this, actually, that ties in with A Song of Ice and Fire about Elrond. But I'm not going to tell. I'm not going to tell you because it's not relevant. But another time.
Yeah, another.
I'm actually.
I
was thinking I might make a video about it, actually.
Do it.
Because it's interesting.
Yeah, do it. I love these theory.
I'll give you a preview. You know the legend of Azor Ahai in A Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah.
And there's this thing about the bloodline and the Jon Snow and Daenerys being like having parts of different bloodlines from all over the continent.
Yeah.
That's Erendil. That's the same thing, right? Pretty much. And well, Erendil near enough, and Elrond and Elroth, literally, like everybody has got some sort of bloodline in those two brothers.
Yeah, and they even have Maya blood, you know.
It's the same thing, and I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that's George taking from Tolkien again.
No, really. And you never get, if you just know the movies again, you never, or even if you just know Lord of the Rings, you never get how important Elrond is. He's just some king in Rivendell, right? Does he even call himself king? No, he doesn't.
No. Well, he's not, is he? He's not a king. He's a law master, and he's
just a random guy in a city. And like, no, he's not. He's actually really, really important. And you get the feeling that Galadriel is kind of more important. Even I mean, you know, she was born in a man, and she's, you know, Finnafin's daughter and whatnot. But still, Elrond is so important because, as you say, he connects everything through Eärendil.
Yeah, but I mean, back to Gil-galad. I mean, if we talk about the movies again, who cares about him? but back to Gil-galad. I mean, he was, as we said right at the beginning of this, he was in the movies for like half a second when he just dies straight away. And then I think they show him actually when they show the Forging of the Rings flashback as well. I think he's there as well, is he?
Yeah,
I can't picture him. Círdan's there. Círdan's like given more prominence in that shot than he is, I think. But where was I going with this? He's you know, he's not there in the battle. He's not mentioned in narration at all, Gil-galad. And Elrond is actually, you know, he's there in that flashback, and we see him, and we know it's Hugo Weaving as well. So we picture him and we remember him, and then we see him later on in the movie, and he's important. But I mean, Gil-galad was his boss at that point in that flashback. But also, like, he's not actually, like, you don't miss him, do you, in the movies? You know, our first episode that we did with Glorfindel, like, I miss him. When he wasn't in the movie, I was like, oh,
I do. And this is what
no Gil-galad. I was like, okay, fine, move on.
and this is what I said. How I would characterize him, and this is why I said he's a bit boring. You know, he is a very if you have, you know,
he's important though, isn't he? But
he's important, but he symbolizes something like a good and wise king who always knew what to do. Who he gave the rings away. He didn't use the rings for himself. He literally gave them the second he got them. He gave them away. He forges a lot. He's like this stereotype how a king should be if you read like a book, and this is how it, like, you know, Arthurian legends and all that. He is a prototype of a good king who reigned for a really, really long time and who made wise and good decisions. Doesn't make him an interesting person. That's a problem. But I mean, you can flesh out.
Yeah, you can make that character happen with, you know, enough creative license, can't you? So
exactly.
So yeah, we should explain how he dies quickly, because we haven't said. He dies at the hand of Sauron in single combat, and we get this actually in the books. We get this second hand through Isildur. So what happens is you'll recall from the Lord of the Rings that Gandalf. I've had too much wine. Gandalf does that test on the ring where he's trying to confirm that it is the One Ring. Finally, he says that he no longer doubts his guess, but he has one last test, and he throws it in the fire. And the reason that he does that is because he has an account from Isildur recovering the ring from Sauron's hand. And backtracking a little bit, Isildur, he leaves a scroll that describes when he recovered the One Ring. And Isildur's speculation is that the ring has the writing and the letters on it because Sauron's hand is hot, and he knows that Sauron's hand is hot because he had just used it to burn Gil-galad to death. So Sauron has a power of burning hand, basically, that does for Gil-galad in the end.
Yeah.
I told that whole story backwards, so I hope that made sense.
No. Yeah, no.
But that's how we get it in the books, isn't it? So
yeah. It's scary actually, but
it is scary, yeah.
But he's a Maya, and Balrogs are Mayas. They are fire spirits. So it makes sense. It's not like, oh, weird. How can he do that?
I don't remember if it's Gandalf that says it, but he says in the Lord of the Rings that Sauron Sauron's the Dark Lord's agents of the Dark Lord, they fear fire, but it can be made to serve him. Which literally, you know, if you've got a hand that, you know, can launch fire out of it, and that's serving.
He's the emperor.
yeah. The Force lightning,
kind of. Good. Yeah. So what do you think of him? Like, I think you said a little bit. I mean, you said.
Yeah, I think you've got my opinion. Good mechanical character that serves the plot, but not the most interesting person, because we don't know what he was like as a person, because we've said all his history, but he's an awesome badass, obviously. Like, he's clearly like got his crap together.
Yeah.
Paraphrasing my thoughts here.
And he was there for all the cool stuff that happened, you know, first and second age. And so he is important, will be important. And I think it's good we covered him because I think not many people know a lot about him. And we tried, you know, to get from Unfinished Tales and get all the info we could grab and find on him and speculate a little bit. And I think it's nice to give more info on someone who literally, as you said, just appeared for a second in a movie, but who actually is important. So this is what, you know, channels like mine is for. And talking about channels, to round this up, Dan, do you want to tell us something? I mean, is that, did you already create it? Can I link it down here? Or
yes, you can. Yeah, I'll give you a link tomorrow at some point or something. And I'll be in the comments in my new account. Spoiler alert, I'm creating a channel. It's happening, which is going to be Voice of Geekdom, which is actually my name here. So Voice of, remember it. It's coming. Brand recognition. And yeah, I'm going to be covering, initially I'm going to be covering Tolkien. I'm going to be covering the Silmarillion. A few people that probably watch this know this already, but I'm going to be covering the Silmarillion in detail. So I'm going to be going through chapter by chapter, giving breakdowns and quoting from the text and giving a few of my thoughts. And it's going to be interesting because
it will be so good.
It's such a good book to go through in detail, isn't it? The Silmarillion. It's like it's because there's so much you can mine it for. It's not like the most joyous read from start to finish because there are good chapters and bad ones, aren't there? But but every chapter has got tons of information. So if you go through it in detail, it's really interesting. Or it should be. So I'm looking forward to it.
Would you say that people need to read it then actually, or can they listen to your content and don't need to read it and get the info from your videos?
Potentially, yeah. I will be retelling the story, so I'll be quoting from it, but I will also make sure that people have the full story from the video, and then I'm going to try to make it suitable for first-time readers. That's my kind of target that I'm trying to hit. So hopefully a few people pick up the book and watch my videos alongside. Although don't wait for me because I might actually be days or weeks between videos, and you should probably just read ahead. But yeah, it's going to be cool. And I also I want to cover Star Trek as well. So if you like Star Trek, I'm a big Star Trek geek as well. So I'll get to that. It's probably going to be a while before I figure out what I'm going to do with that one. But
you need to talk to Gemma and Stephen because they are like big Trekkies as well.
Yeah, I want to have Stephen on when I can. I don't know Gemma particularly well, but you can introduce us maybe. So
yeah, he loves Star Trek. I'm like,
it's not your thing.
I love Star Wars. I can love everything, so
yeah, I've got things I don't like. I know Gemma likes anime. I'm not. And I kind of like a few things, but I don't really like anime on the whole.
I'm like, that's very not my thing.
Yeah, I've heard your thoughts on this. We don't want to go there. Actually, do we? We'll get demonetized if we were monetized.
Oh wow!
I've heard your thoughts. Yeah, I remember. Watch Geek Chat 1 if you want to hear Helen's thoughts on anime.
Exactly. Good. So, but still, Dan will still be here, and maybe we do a fun something similar like this on your channel. I'm totally if you invite me, if you want to have me.
Of course, you have to. Like, I'm gonna make it.
Yeah, I would love to do that. But Dan and I we will continue our series here on Epic Warriors because it's a cool series actually on Epic Warriors of Middle Earth. And I think we agreed the next one is the Witch King, right? Please.
We said this before. So yeah, let's do it. Yeah.
Because we can do baddie goody. I mean
that's the best way, isn't it? Yeah.
Oh God, my favorite person ever.
Yeah, who doesn't love the Witch King?
And there's actually a lot, like what you mentioned before, Gondor and Anu and all that. He plays such a big role during that time. He's not just Sauron's minion in the Third Age. A lot happens before. So
I would argue he's probably the most dynamic antagonist in any of the books, really.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, no, he's not, because if you want to call Gollum an antagonist, he's very dynamic too. But
yeah.
But like the Dark Lord paradigm is, there's a certain distance there, isn't there?
Yeah.
Even with, you know, Sauron, we have like virtually no dialogue with Sauron.
No.
Melkor, we have a fair bit of dialogue. Actually, we actually have more dialogue from Melkor than we do with
him
Sauron
and
overall.
and stuff. Yeah.
But even him, like, he's a, you know, he's a sort of cosmic figure in a way, isn't he? But the Witch King, he's a sorcerer, undead sorcerer king, with quite the cruel streak and a lot of history, and he's somebody who knows how to hold a grudge. And we might have to, the only thing is we might have to split that into 2 episodes, but I don't know how you feel about that. We'll have to plan it.
Yeah, let's see how far we get. Probably not that far.
We'll see. All right,
cool. Very good. So thanks everybody for tuning in and listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Gil-galad. Yeah. And
I'm going to say, because you plugged your channel, you plugged my channel for me. I'm going to say something as well, which is, please do share this with a Tolkien friend. Like the video, comment below, subscribe if you're not already, turn on the bell notifications, all of that good stuff.
Yeah, I always forget to say that. I'm very bad at, you know, I work in advertising. I do advertising, but I always forget to advertise myself. So good. Dan finished his bottle.
I'm halfway through.
Halfway. Very good. Yeah. So thank you, everybody. We're out. I hope you had a lot of fun. Bye bye, my lovelies.
Bye bye, lovelies.